Hello and welcome to this episode of Cassiotti News. I am your host, Nick, and this is your only platform to break up with traditional media and get four political parties and their opinions. Tonight, our first topic, Republicans and Democrats, Angela, seem more polarized than ever before. What happens when we dehumanize each other? Are we currently in the middle of a cold civil war? And how can the average person navigate these opposing sides?
I think, unfortunately, we are in the middle of a cold civil war, and we've seen it. It's been going on, I think, throughout the duration of Donald Trump's presidency. Everyone has just been sort of screaming at each other, and I think that people need to really think about what it would mean to dehumanize people to the point that we get into a hot civil war. We saw a few hot spots over the summer, and people were killed in some of the riots, and it seems like a police officer was killed at the storming of the Capitol last week as well. But calling people monsters and scum, terrorists, saying they should rot in prison, calling them roaches, that sort of language is what leads to cleansing. Maybe it's not going to be ethnic cleansing in the United States, but if we were to continue conversations on this trajectory, in 10 years, it would start to look, I think, like political cleansing.
I want to get more out of you, Angela, right? Because this is for the viewer to get the most out of your point's position. So we've got a lot of people that are in the middle. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't far left, that aren't far right. How are they able to navigate all of this rhetoric from both of these sides? What does that mean?
I think that people need to start having more honest conversations and be willing to listen to people on the other side, even if you know in advance that you're not going to agree with them. That's okay. But being able to listen to someone else and hear their perspective and try to realize that other people experience current events differently than you do. People are at a different place in the country, a different demographic. They have different jobs. They've had different backgrounds and upbringings. And all of that is going to inform their political view. It's not everything is just what you read on CNN and even Twitter. Maybe people need to turn off social media a little bit or change your news sources up. But I think we definitely need to start having more open human conversations and start viewing other people as human beings. We just disagree on politics. We're all flesh and blood, right?
Keith, realistically, looking at it from a million miles above, right? I have no party affiliation. And in all reality, I'm living my life, and I kind of look at politics as the NFL. We've got Republicans and Democrats, and they're not the best two teams. Their team number 31 and 32. I mean, we're talking about two teams that have an 0-16 record is realistically the way that I'm looking at it. Just because of there are numbers, countless numbers of bills and wars that we've gotten into that were overwhelmingly voted upon by both parties, right? The war in Iraq and Afghanistan, both parties had agreed overwhelmingly to approve that. Overwhelmingly have approved hundreds of billions of dollars being sent overseas during this COVID crisis, when a lot of people were asking about the money and the help here at home, right? So are we in a cold civil war? Are we to polarize even more to the left and right? What's your take?
I don't think we've hit rock bottom, but I'm hoping that rock bottom doesn't involve a lot of bloodshed. As Angela mentioned before we started recording, I've been taking hits on social media trying to talk people, back. People are really emotional right now. They're really angry. And one thing I've noticed is because I do view right-wing media and left-wing media, and I don't know what to make of anything nowadays, a lot of the time, but whatever I'm looking at is what I'm angry about. So if you're not looking at right and left-wing sources, you're only, for example, clustering on the right-wing sources or the left, doesn't matter which, that's what you're going to be mad about. And you're not going to understand the reality that other people are coming from when they say, look, Obama had a lot of scandals. And you're thinking, no, he didn't. Well, because you have no idea what they're talking about. Now, I don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, but at least I've heard it before, so I'm not dumbfounded. So Is there a way back from this? I have to hope there is. I mean, right now it seems like it's an information problem. We're all kind of being fed information that's inflaming us, setting us against people who, realistically, I see Richard, Republican, Wisconsin. There's a good chance Richard and I have a lot more in common than we do, or than we're opposed about. If you just sit and talk to people, if you want to agree with somebody, or I'm sorry, if you want to see somebody as a human, you start with something that you agree on, and perhaps if it's say abortion or whatever, you want to find out where the poles are. Here's a ridiculous extreme here, ridiculous extreme here. We can both agree on that, and we can work our way inward until we find out where we disagree exactly. And chances are it's not that far. So it takes effort, and to be honest, I think a lot of what we're seeing is it's laziness on everybody's parts. This is difficult. This is emotionally difficult to look at people who are, somebody called me today. They said something to the effect of, "Why don't you just come right out and say you're a white supremacist and something or else?" I'm listening. Here we go again. But I'm used to it, and that when I criticize people on my side, it doesn't mean that I'm switching teams. I don't want to be on a stupid team. I want my side to be stronger. I want the right side to be stronger because they balance each other out. We need liberals and we need conservatives. And so when I see people going off the deep end on one or both sides, it's bad for all of us.
Joe, I mean, Angela brings up the point of us being hyper-polarized right now, potentially in a cold civil war. The average person, we've talked about this several times, the average person is just seeing far left on the news and far right on the news. And they do that to get clicks. If someone's looking at the Green Party, if someone is fed up with this far left and right, and they're just looking for an out or an alternative, what does the Green Party offer?
The Green Party, like most of the third parties, they offer a different perspective. We don't have the following that either the Democrats or the Republicans come up with. We don't get spoon-fed the rhetoric that's coming out of the left and right news sources, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox News. We're looking at alternative sources. We're looking at green news. We're looking at international sources like Israel Times Now, several others. So we're not stuck in this spoon-fed rhetoric propaganda that's coming out of U.S. media in order to keep the aggravation going in on both sides. So we get to slow down, we take a look, and we have the views of science. We want to go back. We look at history. We see what's happening now. We see how it reflects, in historical texts. Are we repeating history? Absolutely. What can we do to make the results different this time than they were, last time? Whether it was 70 years ago when we were looking at going into World War II and the Weimar Republic, whether we go clear back to Roman times and take a look at the way the empires there fell. How can we do things different now so that we don't get caught in this continuous loop? So it's to step back and evaluate, take a look at history. Make common sense so that we don't make the same mistakes.
Richard, he brings up some really good points that sometimes with hyperpolarization, it just doesn't end very well. We're the United States. We're supposed to be the most free country on planet Earth. Are we with this hyperpolarization? I mean, it's hard to go somewhere and not see far left versus far right. To Keith's point, are we going to be able to meet in the middle?
I totally agree. I just want to say to Keith, I completely agree that me and you, we're probably 85% in common. And with the Green Party, 85% in common. And Libertarian, 85% in common. I feel like I'm the biggest Green Party advocate in that anyone could ever talk about. I think it's probably the Green Party is they don't have a platform. They never talk about manufacturing. But that's, kind of a different, maybe a different direction. But I think going back to the original point, though, as far as, with calling people like Nazis, people say that because that's, of course, like it's the most available term that signifies right versus wrong. So it's thrown around very flippantly. And I think a lot of these words, we're going to have to start coming up with new words. What's a new word for the word racism, a new word for the Nazism, or a new word for fascism? Because really, the people who use these words they're either too lazy or incapable of discourse. And when you label people these words, it's for the sole purpose of dismissing their argument right away. And that's why I'm so happy that you're having this platform right here, so we can actually talk about these in a more civilized way. Because calling people these kind of things, it is dehumanizing. And going to the Civil War, I don't know if I see a civil war as far as the Confederacy versus the Union, but I can see unrest in our major cities. I mean, there's been a war in Chicago. There's been a war in Baltimore. I can see the cities having a lot more tension going forward. And I guess I'll leave it at that. But as far as a hot civil war between two different, as far as having a clear front line, I don't see it as that. But this is the United States, so I know I'm very confident we are going to pull through this. Because like you said, we have so much in common.
You said you see tensions flaring. I don't think anybody in the United States wants tensions flaring. I don't think any of us want that. But it's hard, Richard. It's hard to say you disagree or you don't like someone, and then if you just say I don't like a particular individual, then they pick up on who you are and label you racist. I mean, are these labels necessary?
Well, of course they're not necessary, but that's just the way of delegitimizing someone's argument from the get-go. If you call somebody a racist, which is the worst term you can call somebody, that's a quick way of saying, I don't have to listen to anything you say because you're obviously a Nazi or a fascist. And I think with a lot of this tension is coming from the major cities at this point because the services have just gone through the ground. Your garbage isn't getting picked up on time. The school systems are going to the trash. So people are leaving the cities now, and it's going to cause a vacuum. And I could see tension happening inside of our major cities, our great cities.
Well, I mean, I'm not against you, right? I'm just here to pull a little bit more out of you. And I think the audience is going to deserve the best to come out of your argument. So you're seeing people come out of these cities. You said that you're seeing a lot of this breakdown. This has happened under 4 years of Donald Trump. Is Trump responsible for this type of breakdown?
The cities have been declining for 40 years. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. The divide has been happening for decades. And if anybody who disagrees with that is just, like Joe was saying, not looking at history. This is a gradual process that's been happening, and it's creating a lot of angst in some groups versus other groups.